There's a particular kind of person who finds it harder to relax than most people, not because life is more chaotic for them, not because they have more problems than everyone else, but because their mind rarely stops moving. They can sit alone in a quiet room with nothing demanding their attention and suddenly find themselves thinking about something that happened years ago. A conversation, a choice, a moment they thought they had forgotten, not because they're trapped in the past, because their mind keeps searching for meaning inside experiences that other people have already left behind. Most of these people never describe themselves as deep thinkers. In fact, many quietly wonder if something is wrong with them. Why does everything seem to have so many layers? Why does a simple interaction stay in their mind long after everyone else has moved on? Why does understanding something rarely feel complete? What they often don't realize is that this isn't a flaw in the way they think. It's a particular psychological orientation, a way of engaging with the world that makes the mind naturally move beneath the surface. And one of the clearest signs of it is something surprisingly simple. They struggle to let questions die. Most people are uncomfortable with uncertainty. The human brain is designed to seek closure. When something doesn't make sense, it wants an answer, any answer. An explanation acts like a blanket. It covers the discomfort. It allows the mind to move on. But deep thinkers often experience something different. A question doesn't feel like a problem that needs to be eliminated. It feels like a doorway. When they encounter something they don't understand, they don't immediately rush to close the loop. Instead, they stay with it, sometimes for days, sometimes for years. A friend says something strange. A relationship ends unexpectedly. An event unfolds in a way that doesn't quite fit the explanation everyone accepts. And while others, people quickly settle into a conclusion, the deep thinker keeps circling the question, not because they're indecisive, not because they're confused, because part of them senses there is still more to see. Psychologists often describe this as a high tolerance for ambiguity. The ability to remain psychologically comfortable in situations where certainty is unavailable. And while that sounds like a small trait, it changes the way a person experiences almost everything. As children, these individuals are often the ones who ask questions that seem unusually complicated for their age. They don't just ask what happened. They ask why, and then they ask why again, and then another why after that. Sometimes adults find it exhausting. Sometimes they mistake curiosity for stubbornness. But underneath it is a mind that instinctively looks beyond the first layer. As they grow older, this pattern becomes more sophisticated. Instead of asking why the sky is blue, they begin asking how people behave the way they do, why some relationships feel safe and others don't, why certain memories refuse to fade, why success leaves some people fulfilled and others strangely empty. Their attention naturally moves toward complexity, toward hidden motivations, toward invisible forces operating beneath visible events. The challenge is that this tendency doesn't always feel like a gift. In everyday life, it can feel heavy. A casual conversation might stay with them for hours because they're replaying the emotional undertones. A decision that takes someone else 5 minutes might require days of reflection. A small misunderstanding can lead to an entire internal investigation. Their mind becomes a familiar room they return to again and again, examining details from different angles, noticing things they missed before. And because this process happens automatically, they often assume everyone else experiences the world the same way. Only later do they realize that why people move through life differently. Many people are comfortable accepting surface explanations. Many people don't spend an evening wondering about the deeper meaning of a passing comment. Many people aren't constantly connecting present experiences to older patterns. Deep thinkers often are. This is partly because the brain naturally seeks patterns, but in deep thinkers, that pattern-seeking tendency becomes amplified. A single experience rarely remains isolated. It becomes connected to other memories, other observations, other insights, like threads being woven into a larger tapestry. The mind is constantly asking, what does this mean? How does this fit? What larger story is this part of? And because of that, deep thinkers frequently notice things others miss. They sense shifts in people's emotions before those emotions are openly expressed. They recognize recurring cycles. They see connections between events that seem unrelated on the surface. Sometimes this month, aches them appear intuitive, but often it's less mysterious mysterious than that. Their brain has simply been collecting pieces for a very long time, quietly building a larger picture. Yet there is another side to this. The same mind that sees more connections also sees more possibilities, more outcomes, more interpretations, more unanswered questions, which means certainty can sometimes feel frustratingly distant. And this is where many deep thinkers become unfairly critical of themselves. They assume their constant reflection is evidence that they're overthinking, that they're making life harder than it needs to be, that everyone else has figured out something they haven't. But here's the interesting paradox. The discomfort they feel isn't always coming from thinking too deeply. Sometimes it's coming from living in a world that often rewards quick conclusions over careful understanding, because not every question exists to be solved immediately. Some questions are meant to be lived with. Some truths reveal themselves slowly. Some forms of understanding require patience. And perhaps that's the deeper reframe hiding underneath all of this. What feels like mental restlessness is often the mind's way of honoring complexity. Not every person is driven to look beneath the surface. Not every person feels compelled to explore the layers beneath an experience, but the deep thinker does, because something inside them senses that reality is rarely as simple as it first appears. As adulthood continues, many deep thinkers begin noticing another shift. The questions become less intellectual and more personal. They start wondering about identity, purpose, meaning, the nature of fulfillment, the things that truly matter. And while these questions don't always produce neat answers, they become important companions, like an anchor dropped into deeper waters. Not something that prevents movement, something that provides orientation, a reference point, a why of staying connected to what feels real. This often creates moments of loneliness, not because deep thinkers dislike people, but because it can sometimes feel difficult to explain the world they're experiencing internally. A conversation that feels profound to them may seem insignificant to someone else. An observation that feels important may be dismissed as unnecessary. A question that occupies their mind for weeks may never even occur to another person. And so they learn to carry much of their inner life quietly, not hidden, just difficult to translate. Yet over time, something remarkable often happens. The same tendency that once felt burdensome begins to feel familiar. Not always comfortable, but familiar. Like returning to a home you've spent years learning to understand. They stop seeing their curiosity as a problem. They stop treating every unanswered question as evidence of failure. They stop demanding certainty from themselves, and instead, they begin recognizing a simple truth. Their mind was never built for quick conclusions. It was built for exploration, for reflection, for depth, for meaning. The need to understand isn't a defect. The tendency to look deeper isn't a weakness. The questions that stay alive inside them aren't proof that they're broken. They're evidence of a mind that engages with life differently, a mind that notices layers, a mind that senses complexity, a mind that keeps searching, not because it is lost, but because it is naturally drawn toward understanding. And perhaps that is the most important thing to remember. The parts of yourself that once felt strange may simply be the shape of how your mind was always meant to work. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone will share it, but that doesn't make it wrong. It simply means that while others may move quickly across the surface, you were always someone who felt compelled to look beneath the water. And there is nothing flawed about that. It's simply the quiet nature of a mind that keeps going deeper.